If you grew up in divorce, chaos, or abuse, you might look confident on the outside, but on the inside, you second guess everything. Your decisions, your relationships, your instincts. Today, I'm going to show you why that happens and how to rebuild self trust brick by brick. There's a phrase that I've often been afraid to say out loud, but I knew internally, deeply, was correct. And it was, I don't trust my own judgment. Now, if you grew up in a traumatic situation between the ages of infancy and 12 years old, then 100% I want you to understand something. That is completely normal. In fact, it is a neurological response to your environment to keep you in survival. The problem is, when you live in for survival for too long, you grow into despair. The longer you're in despair, the more you don't want to live. And so, as someone who came from a broken home, who dealt with a severely abusive biological father, and a suicide attempt survivor, 2022, today I want to talk to you guys about why you don't trust your own judgment and give you the psychological, spiritual, neuroscientific reasons as to why that's happening, but also the road back. And so, I'm very glad to see you guys, and I want you to know that you're not alone. If you've never been here before, I want to introduce ourselves. My name is Thomas Emmanuel Orms O'Brien. I'm the founder and CEO of the company called Building a Home Inc. My wife and I are the president and vice president of the company. And what we've done is track down a formula and reverse engineer despair so that one may have a whole life. Not a perfect life, but one that has nothing missing nor broken. And I know that may be hard for you to understand or even accept right now, but I want you to know that it is possible. And in fact, the people who need it the most are the ones whose their first home was broken. What we do is, in architectural terms, describe what one person needs to thrive on this side of life. So, every week we do a recap because we understand that our verbiage is very unique to us. As far as we know, no one else is speaking this way. And so we go through the process of explaining to you the Building a Home framework, or for short, the BHI framework. And it's very simple in its practice. It's 7 things that any one person may need, we believe, to have a thriving life. And because we believe that a good life must be intentionally built, we decided to use the framework of a house, of a home, to bring that explanation to bear. So, just like anything in construction, you have to start from the bottom up. And so your foundation must be love and truth. If you believe yourself to be unloved, not only is that not true, but it will not allow you to move forward to start making the better decisions so that your life can turn around. Synonymously, truth is a requirement, and how we define truth is 2 things. One, that is measurable by science in the universe, and 2, what is true to you. Now, what does that mean? Because this phrase, my truth, has been used over and over again the past decade. But what we mean by my truth or your truth is what is true about you, who you are, what you've been through, your favorite color, your favorite food, the things that have traumatized you in your life. The truth of your personal circumstance. And we believe when you combine all of those things together, love and truth, because love without truth is tolerance, and truth without love is just brutality. But, like I said, since the aim is wholeness, you need both. The second, really what people don't see too much, but so very integral for how you live this life is the basement, which is identity and integrity. Identity being who you are, your God given identity from the cosmos. And obviously, as we've stated before, this is a theistic company. We do believe in the God in the Bible, perfectly expressed in the person of Jesus. That being said, we are completely anti religion. Religion defined is man telling you who God is, versus a relationship is God defining himself for you. Very different in its distinction. And so, our conclusion was that if God is indeed the universal force of love, the one that has created this universe, and life has meaning beyond, and there is something to hope for, there is something to live for, then the most accurate depiction and or description of that would be Jesus. Now, I'm not going to get into the biblical side of things because that's for another video. But regardless, we don't hide that. We leave it out in the open and we allow you to make the discernment for yourself. And so, if you were to believe in a God that designed or created the universe, then inherently you would believe that you have a design, that you were created for a very specific purpose here on earth. And if he would be the originator of all things, he would be the source to know who you are, hence identity. And again, we have another video for that as well. But regardless, what pairs with that is integrity, identity, and integrity. Why? Because once you know who you are, or you're in the process of discovering who you are, to be a person of integrity would mean that on a daily basis, you would try your utmost to fulfill that description of who you are to 100%. Now, obviously, if you come from a traumatic background or, excuse me, you're in the journey of discovery, you wouldn't be able to be at 100%. And that's okay. I think it is a marker of success to start that journey of discovery and get closer and closer and closer to the person that you were created to be. And I do believe it is a lifelong pursuit. But regardless, what would make you integral or integritous is a person who does their best every single day to be themselves. Nothing more, nothing less. And guess what? That is enough. And it's more than enough. The next part of the house will be the first floor, after the basement. And the first floor is about your health, your physical health, and your financial health. Because if you have an understanding that love and truth is your foundation, identity is integrity is your basement, then you would treat yourself and your resources appropriately. If you have a bad idea or a false identity, then, of course, it would make sense that you make decisions that lead to self-sabotage or decisions that don't place you on that upward aiming path of improvement. All those things boil down into what the world calls personal development, right? But if you are loved and you have the truth or you are in pursuit of it, you know who you are and you do your best to be who you are, then your physical health and your financial health will matter to you greatly. Because your physical health and financial health propel you into the second floor, which is vocations. Namely put, vocare is the root word in Latin, and that is to call, right? So your specific calling or callings in life, because it doesn't necessarily have to be singular. That's why we have vocations. And there are several expressions to that, but regardless, the very thing or things that you yourself are meant to do on this side of life. Then after that, we have the attic, which is your hobbies or joy. And we define your hobbies and joy as the things you love doing with the people that you love doing it with. Because not only is it a spiritual requirement, but joy is a scientific requirement as well. The brain needs joy to function properly. After that, to the side of the house, we have a chimney. And a chimney does one thing and one thing only: let the smoke out. And so, for us, the chimney is release. It is letting go of the people and things that don't serve your specific purpose here on earth. And regardless, whether you have a correct idea of what forgiveness is or not, we walk you through as to exactly what that means and what we believe to be the scientific, psychological, spiritual basis for that. But, like I said, our basic division is letting go of the people and things that do not serve your purpose. And finally, you have the skylight, that open window at the top of the house that illuminates each and every single floor. In other words, wisdom or perspective. Because, again, if you were to believe that you had design from a God who created the universe in love, then your story would have purpose. Specifically, in our case, since we focus on traumatized individuals and their childhood, your pain would not be pointless nor meaningless. Everything that you have gone through would be for the good, not only of yourself, but for mankind. Because your greatest pain is most possibly someone else's ultimate healing. The things that you have been through, that you survived, would be able to carry someone else who is going through either the exact same thing or something very similar. So when you have all of those things together, you have a beautifully constructed house, and your life would be whole. Because other than those things, I don't know what else one would need. Love, truth, identity, integrity, physical health, financial wealth, purpose, joy, release, and wisdom. And so, that's what we walk people through. It happens in our Skool community. You can work one-on-one with us to have a more detailed description of that for your life. But today, we're going to take a combination of the two things, because not having self-judgment is, number one, an identity problem, so we're bringing in the basement, and number two, a skylight problem, having a misunderstanding of why things happened in your life, that perspective, that wisdom. And so I want to walk you through all of the negatives, all of the things that are quite possibly actively going on in your mind on a daily basis, and I surely have gone through those things as well, but also some solutions, some action steps that you can take to finally start your inward look of curious grace, not judgment. So there are 5 things that we believe that a person from childhood divorce or chaos loses self-trust, aka the causes. We're going to go through those things together, give a brief description, and then possibly describe for you how those things show up as an adult. So, number 1 is that you had to be the peacekeeper. Whatever the situation was in your household growing up, if it was one of divorce or chaos, you had to become an adult long before your time. And so you learned that your feelings were too much, so you stopped trusting them. Because in the midst of the battle between your parents, or the battle between you and one parent, or you and your environment, or your parents and their environment, if you expressed how you truly felt, you either shut down, shamed, or even physically, mentally, and emotionally abused for it. And so you were taught to suppress your own instinct just so that you could have a moment of reprieve. Number two is that the rules changed overnight. Divorce teaches reality can flip at any moment. So your brain stays uncertain almost all the time. You don't have the capacity to form complex, safe, and healthy patterns because as a child, really your environment is completely out of your control and most oftentimes in control of you. Number three, you were forced into adult decisions too early. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but you carried weight you weren't built for. And later, you doubt yourself for struggling. And you have to remember that it actually is an intelligent response by your brain. Because your brain at the time that needed healthy development didn't receive it. And in fact, the parts of your brain that run off of fear, doubt, shame, guilt, second guessing are actually enlarged from your experiences. Number four is gaslighting or minimization, even if it was subtle, because some of the worst abuse was passive aggressive. It's not that bad. You're dramatic. Stop being sensitive. All of those things drilled into you from a young age that trains you to distrust your own perception. Number five, loyalty binds. You learn to split your truth to keep everyone okay. And self-trust dies when truth is negotiable. In my case, my very abusive biological father indoctrinated me from a young age to absolutely despise my heartbroken mother. And she had been abused by him long before I was born. And unfortunately, he was a master manipulator, narcissist, sociopathic, convicted felon, absentee individual. But when he was in my life, he made it a point to train me that if I were to choose for even one moment my mother over him, that all of his love would be completely removed out of my life fully and in an instant. And so, unfortunately, I didn't have a great relationship with my mother growing up because I didn't want to lose the love of my father. And here's the thing, that may not have been your case, but regardless, it breaks the child's mind when one has to decide between one parent and the other. Now we can talk about how it shows up. Adult symptoms. Number one, relationship selection is greatly affected because the two relationships that were most responsible for teaching you love and truth in your childhood and help nurture your identity to allow you to become an integritous person, teach you about your physical health and your finances, talk to you about purpose, talk to you and experience joy with you, show you what release looks like, and point you in the direction of heavenly perspective. You don't have the capacity to choose good relationships. That's why oftentimes we go into a cycle of not only just bad romantic partners, but malinfluential friends. Myself, I definitely have dealt with both. But what ends up happening is you become an expert at choosing unsafe people. And the people that are actually trying to love you and looking out for your best interest are a threat because you believe they're faking it or they're trying to gain something from you on their own behalf. Another thing is a fear of commitment. Why? Because oftentimes a person who comes from a childhood like that is always expecting the other shoe to drop. So if I fully commit to you and you don't fully commit to me, then the brain perceives that as death. The same type of death that would have happened 10,000 years ago if a saber-toothed tiger was chasing you through the jungle. So, don't beat yourself up. It's actually normal for anyone who has been in a situation like that. Regardless, though, there are solutions to these things. The next shows up at work. You either are a people pleaser, you say yes to everyone without a care in the world about yourself, knowing that you're slipping away each and every single time, that a piece of your soul is being chipped when you people please for somebody else. Why? Because the thought of rejection, the thought of being looked down upon, the thought of not meeting others' standards for you is life-threatening and crushing. Again, why? Because either one of your parents or both of your parents showed you that if you didn't say yes at expense of your own heart, mind, soul, and strength, that you were going to die. Or we deal with imposter syndrome. You succeed, but every measure of your success you second guess. You think you don't deserve it. In fact, you think that the success is only going to last for a little while and then it's going to go away. And so continuously, over and over and over again, perhaps not only do you self-sabotage yourself, but you pass up amazing opportunities for your own life. And money. The first thing that shows up oftentimes is avoidance. Why? Because money itself, being a tool, is a deep representation of your mental state. If you're bad with money, it's not because you're bad with money. It's because you're bad in here. Your heart, mind, and soul are broken in ways you possibly don't want to talk about. And because money is a tool that society and humanity has placed value upon, it is the thing that to be successful you must look deeply and be very much involved in. You don't have the capacity to do that. So you avoid getting real about your finances because, hey, what's the point? Or you just say, I'll start tomorrow. You blew this week's paycheck and you make that promise to yourself for the 58th time. Next week, I'm going to sit down, really look at it, and I'm going to get my finances in order. Then next week comes, and by Sunday, you deposited that check on Friday, and your money's gone again. Next is spiritual. You have a very big confusion between anxiety and discernment. In last week's video, the Skylight, we explained why someone who comes from a broken home has trouble with the notion of God as the universal force of love and having a relationship with him, discerning your path in life, right? Because if there was a God that designed the universe, like I said, inherently you would have a design for your life. And the relationship with God, plainly, right, without laying out every single Bible verse that talks about it, is about discovering your purpose that he has created for you. And so it becomes very hard to discern things from a God, quote unquote, that you cannot see. And you have to rely on what goes on internally. That is what discernment is. Is this right for me? Is it not? All thoughts and ideas that pass through your mind are what's in the spiritual realm. Because as of this moment, yes, you have a brain, but you cannot physically touch your mind. So that makes it ethereal. And if you lobotomize yourself, you'll be dead, so you won't be able to discover that regardless. So at this moment in time, the mind, very intriguing scientific topic, but also that is where the spiritual is. And it becomes very hard to have discernment when you grow up that way. With all that being said, the good news is there is hope for you. And I know because I've discovered that very hope for myself. Even though I never possibly quite thought that I would be able to lead a life worth living After my suicide attempt, I inherently knew three things. Number one, if I was still alive, then God did exist because he was the very question on my mind as I made my attempt. Number two, if he does exist, then he loves me. Even if I don't fully understand what that love means or how it would play out, at least I knew that my life had intrinsic value and purpose. And number three, I immediately knew that for the remainder of my life, my absolute pursuit and ultimate aim would be in the answering of two questions. Who am I, and why am I here? And that's really important for people who grew up in trauma, because trauma defined is this. Trauma is not the event itself that occurred, whether it was an abandonment or a rape or a beating, any number of things that could have happened in your life while you're growing up in your childhood, whatever things that happened, right? Trauma defined is the wound that you sustained internally as a result. Now, this is very good news because of the nature of what a wound is. Because if it is a wound, not only can it be examined, but it can heal. And there is no time in which it cannot. Some wounds take much longer than others, but the good news is it can be remedied. And when you look at trauma in that lens, you understand that you no longer have to cast judgment on yourself nor others, but you would start to explore the world, yourself included, with a curious grace, discovering the why instead of worrying about the how. Very important. So, what I want to do is give you perhaps some action steps to help rebuild that self-trust, maybe that trust with God, maybe trust with other people. But regardless, you have to remember that you cannot give what you don't have. And so, the most important thing that you can do is start with you first. Prioritize yourself for a while so that then you can start prioritizing others from a position of authority and strength. Brick number one is to start telling the truth in small things. What that means is integrity restores inner alignment. You can start micro, because one of the things that I had to learn how to do very well growing up was lie, because the truth meant death in my life. But now, thank God, the truth is what sets me free. And so, if you don't want to go to an event with friends or you don't want to hang out with someone, just say it. I don't want to go. And remember, you don't have to explain yourself. It's just a matter of telling the truth. Or, I need a night off. If there's something that you've been continuously doing, or a plan, or a group that you have involved yourself in, it's okay to say, hey, I need a night off. Now, if it's from work, your boss may or may not approve it. But hopefully, after sticking with us for a while, you won't necessarily have to have a job. You'll be able to pursue your purpose in life, which ideally would be through self-employment, because that is the fastest track to buy back your time. Regardless, it's okay to say, I need a night off. The next thing would be to say, that hurt me. Stop just brushing off when others bother you. Because not only are you doing a disservice to them, you're doing the greatest disservice to your soul, because then it sits and it festers and it eats away at you. And while slowly wishing the other person to be in pain as you are, you're the one that swallowed the poison pill and starts to die. And so self-trust grows when you stop betraying yourself. Brick number 2. Make one decision and keep it. Start tiny. All right? A morning routine for 7 days. I decided that I will wake up every morning at 6:30 and walk 2 miles. And I've been doing it every day. Now, granted, I haven't been perfect, but I have done 7 days in a row, 2 weeks in a row. Recently, I've had some changes in my schedule that I haven't been able to do it, but I've still been waking up faithfully every day at 6:30, and for the most part, I have been very consistent in doing those morning walks, and I plan on doing those morning walks for the rest of my life. But it started tiny. I did it for a full week. So after that, the next thing I would recommend would be to one budget action this week. Take a look at your finances, analyze the things that you know you shouldn't be doing, and just remove one of them. Take that micro win with your finances. Another thing, one boundary that you hold. So there is that relationship. Oftentimes, people who come from traumatic childhoods like myself, there is that one relationship that you consistently let push past your personal desires, boundaries. Hold a boundary this week. And if that person gets angry with you for upholding a boundary, then I'm sorry to tell you, they shouldn't be a person in your life anyway. A true friend wants to grow with you indefinitely. Brick 3, separate anxiety from wisdom. Anxiety is often this: loud, urgent, catastrophic. Wisdom is calm, clear, and patient. So the question you need to ask is this: is this fear or truth? Brick 4, build a decision filter. This is one of our Skylight tools. And you ask yourself 3 questions. What's true? Observe the facts. What's wise? That's long term. 3, what aligns with who I'm becoming? Identity. Very important. Brick 5, choose safe people and stop outsourcing your soul. Counsel is good. Dependence is not. Self-trust grows when you hear input, but you still choose. And again, if someone gets mad at you for not taking their advice, then they weren't doing it for your benefit anyway. Because someone who truly loves and cares for you would support whichever decision you make, regardless of whether or not they believed it to be right for you. Because that's the purpose of advice: to advise, not to impose. Very clear distinction. I want to give you a hope and identity anchor. If this video resonated with you, then of course we're very happy. If it didn't, regardless, we're still happy that you're here, and we would love your feedback. But I just want you to know one thing: you're not broken. You were trained for instability, but you can retrain. Self-trust is built brick by brick through truth, consistency, and wisdom. This has been Thomas Emmanuel Arms O'Brien. Love you guys.